Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call, particularly those of you that are calling in for the first time and that over the next 24 to 48 hours will probably be listening to our replay. We're happy to provide this information to you. We know you're busy people, and so we appreciate your attendance here. We have a standard format. We like to move quickly, bottom line the information for you. We spend a few minutes talking about the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar, which we continue to believe is the base currency for the reset of some of these other currencies. As we spend a few minutes talking about the program that we've put in place to assist you, and then we go to a brief Q&A. So let's go ahead and get started, and let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Iraq. Not much has changed over the last week. We find ourselves pretty much in the same situation. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves, we're sharing with you the information that we think is relevant. The first relevant piece of information is, of course, some expectation about the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. And I'm still in the same place that I've been for several months. There is the possibility of the reinstitution of the dinar in the next 60 to 90 days. Worst case scenario, the backstop for me will be January of 2020 when they pass their 2020 budget. That would be the optimal time to adjust the rate, although that is something that could be accomplished now in the next 60 to 90 days if all of the other issues in country have been resolved. And we find ourselves dealing with the same issues. First, the formation of the new government. Second, passage and implementation of the law of financial administration. And third is the final currency reforms having to do primarily with the deletion of the zeros and the reinstitution of the currency. So let's start and talk a little bit about the government. We still find ourselves in the same place. There are 4 unseated ministers within the Mahdi cabinet. And there does not seem to be a meeting of the minds on those 4 positions. There is a parliamentary session scheduled for next week, and the parliament has issued a suggestion to Mahdi that he suggest or rather nominate anywhere from 3 to 5 individuals for each of the 4 remaining seats on the theory that the parliament at some point would have to accept those, confirm those 4 seats if they have 3 to 5 individuals to choose from. Now, the seats that are still open, and I did not get into this in previous weeks, but we might as well talk about it because this remains a sticking block. The first is education. Now, you wouldn't think that would be an issue, but remember, Iraq as an Islamic nation is what I would call a quasi-theocracy. So you have Sunni, you have Shia, and you have Kurds. And so for varying reasons, it's important to them who's going to be in charge of education. Second area is defense. Now, defense is an issue on several levels. First of all, military readiness. Secondly, providing sufficient military where they can deal with the Revolutionary Guard from Iran. And in general, just providing for their military as a standalone once the United States status of forces agreement comes to an end and they exit the country. The third is the Minister of Interior. Once again, we're dealing with a sectarian nation. There are internal issues. For example, the Kurds want to make sure that Article 140, the de-Arabization of Kurdistan, takes place. Then there's the oil and gas law. They want to make sure, for example, that the distributions of the revenue from the sale of petroleum are met. So that's another issue. The last is the Minister of Justice. This might be the most important blank spot because there is disagreement about to what extent the justice and accountability law will be enforced. So That's why these four seem to be a problem. And unfortunately, and this is just my opinion, the reason they seem to be a problem, particularly justice, is because a lot of the corrupt officials just want to get out of jail card, and so they do not want to see appointed someone that they know is going to be scrupulously administering the justice and accountability law. So that situation needs to be resolved. Now, if it's not resolved by the end of the month, theoretically, the Mahdi will either have to resign or he will face a no-confidence vote. And I would suggest at this point that he probably would not survive a no-confidence vote. I also believe baked into the cake as the result of the Sadr's position is that they are fully prepared to orchestrate a no-confidence vote on the theory that they're just going to reinstate a body who was their first choice to begin with. So we'll just have to see how this plays out. But it would seem that something of a dramatic nature will bring this issue, the formation of the new government, to resolution after June 30 if it's not resolved before that. Now, with regard to the law of financial administration, it's been passed, but it has not been implemented. There are two major issues that are being dealt with. One is the audit of the auctions, the currency auctions, and again, there's been so much corruption there that the appointment of the Minister of Justice is going to have a direct effect on how that is resolved. The second issue is now they've got a committee that will oversee the CBI operations. Once again, back in 2012, it was corruption within the CBI that created a situation where they did not feel comfortable with the reinstitution of the dinar then. So, once again, the Minister of Justice would have a direct effect on that as well. Now, with regard to the currency reforms themselves, again, they want the currency options to be stopped permanently. They want to see the deletion of the zeros completed. They also want to see the release of the lower denoms, particularly the 50s and the 100s from the banks. Now, this is actually a good sign because while the 50s and the 100s are not on the street, they are in the possession of the banks. But at the current rate of the dinar in country, the 50 and the 100 are respectively worth a nickel and a dime. Now, why is that important? Because the new currency has been designed at quite some expense. It's the anti-counterfeit features that have been included in the new currency. So why would the CBI and the government of Iraq issue, or at least issue to the 8 regional banks, the 50s and the 100s at such an expense? The only plausible explanation would be they're anticipating the reinstitution of the currency and a substantial increase, at least in country, in the value of the dinar, which would justify the cost of producing the 50s and the 100s. Of course, once the 50s and the 100s go out, one of two things is going to happen. Either they will simultaneously announce the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar, or they will have a date in the near future, within a matter of weeks, that they're going to go ahead and officially announce the reinstitution. So having reviewed all of this, once again, best case scenario would be 60 to 90 days. Worst case scenario, in my opinion, would be January of 2020. I've also said that the only fly in the ointment for me would be the fact that they'd have to recalibrate the 2019 budget because they've already made all of the expenditures for the first quarter and they're preparing for the expenditures for the second quarter at the 1180 rate. So they basically need almost to redo the entire budget in order to accommodate the increased value from the reinstitution. But if they get all of these other issues resolved, I think they'd rather go ahead and reinstitute now rather than wait to January. But again, for those that I hear from on a daily basis that are disappointed with the continued postponements, I really don't see how they can go beyond January of 2020. And for those of us that have been involved for 2, 5, even 10 years, another 6 months is really not that long. That also gives individuals that have not gotten their affairs in order a couple of advantages. Number one, this gives you more time to purchase more dinar if you are of the belief, as I am, that the currency must reval in the not-too-distant future. It also gives you time to get your affairs in order, and you may not even know what that involves. But to that end, Trust Unlimited has put a program in place to assist you. It's a two-phased program. Phase 1 is pre-RV. Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV involves the establishment of a pre-RV package of asset protection trusts with the assignment of your currencies on paper to that trust package. Post-RV involves all of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. So let's start with Phase 1, which is the establishment of your pre-RV package of asset protection trusts. Very simply, a trust is a legal instrument one can establish to hold, to manage, to protect assets. Trust can fall into some basic categories. For example, a trust can be revocable or it can be irrevocable. In order to have the asset protection you're going to need and want, you're going to need to establish a package of irrevocable trusts, and that package must be established prior to the revaluation of these currencies. Now, before I proceed, I'd like to touch on some of the other instruments that we run across that purport to provide asset protection. The first would be some of the business entities like LLCs and sub-S corporations. They do provide some asset protection, but they are nevertheless government-issued entities. And the best that they can probably do is separate your business assets from your personal assets. The problem with the LLC and the sub-S, however, is that a number of courts have ruled that if an LLC or a sub-S corporation is owned by either one person or a family or some small group, in the majority, meaning 51% of the stock or more, that entity, whether it's an LLC or sub-S corporation, can be pierced for civil litigation. So these assets, once again, are established primarily for businesses and are not going to provide the asset protection you're going to need and want. You could set up, for example, an individual irrevocable trust, but the problem with that is all of the assets are in one trust or one legal entity, meaning that if any asset within that trust is involved in civil litigation, because that asset also owns other property, all of that can be brought into civil litigation, so that's not going to be appropriate. What an individual needs to establish is a package of trusts, which I am going to explain in a little bit more detail. Now, once again, you're going to need to establish this package of trusts prior to the revaluation of these currencies for a number of reasons. First, by establishing this pre-RV package of asset protection trusts and assigning your currencies on paper to that trust package, you will protect your privacy and your anonymity, because assets held within our trust package are sealed, meaning that the general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. Second, by establishing our trust package, you will be able to successfully avoid personal IRS scrutiny. If you're holding these currencies in direct title when they revalue, the IRS computers will probably spit out an audit. And with the potential magnitude of this revaluation relative to your prior year's earnings, you're probably looking at a full-blown 6-year audit. Such an audit will be time-consuming, it will be frustrating, and frankly, it will probably cost you more than the cost of our asset protection trust package. On the other hand, if your trust is in place pre-RV and your currencies have been assigned to that trust package, you have successfully transferred the taxable event of the revaluation from yourself personally to the trust. Now, that's important for a couple of reasons. First, there's less than a 10% chance of an IRS audit if this revaluation were to occur within our trust package. But second, and most importantly, even if the IRS determines to audit your trust, they cannot do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. The third reason you'd want to establish this trust package is if you plan on gifting currency to family and friends in certain situations. Philanthropic giving can always be done on a tax-preferred basis, either pre- or post-RV. But in order to avoid a substantial 40% federal gift tax, you're going to need to give currencies to family and friends prior to the revaluation. Now, if you're gifting to individuals, that you have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves or giving them the lump sum after you've conducted the exchange. That can be accomplished outside of a trust with a standard gift letter. But if you are hesitant for any reason to give these individuals the post-RV lump sum, then you can give to them through a special gift subtrust that we have created as part of our package. By gifting to them through this subtrust, their dollars will be protected along with yours. The language of the trust allows you to gift up to a certain amount of a currency or currencies, meaning you can gift the exact dollar amount that you had in mind, irrespective of the exchange rate. But because you're gifting through the trust, you will have complete control of the post-RV proceeds, meaning that you can manage, invest, and distribute these funds to the individuals you should deem appropriate. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. I'll give you two quick scenarios. Scenario number one, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, you pass away, the day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs an estate of $25 million. Now that estate must go through probate, a process that ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But probate is a public disclosure process, meaning that the general public will be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. So if anyone feels they have a legitimate claim against you, your estate, or your heirs, they can simply file that claim with a probate court. And that could tie the estate up for years, and in some cases even decades. And your heirs will have either limited access or no access at all to their respective inheritance until the probate process is completed. Then there's something called the federal estate tax. This is the tax that the federal government would assess in order for that estate to be transferred to heirs. Under current law, approximately $10 million of that $25 million estate would bypass any federal estate tax, but the balance could be taxed as much as 55%. Scenario number two, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, you assign those currencies on paper to our asset protection trust package. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs that same estate of $25 million, but this time protected in our asset protection trust package. As a result, there will be no probate, there will be no public disclosure of your estate, your heirs will have immediate access to their respective inheritance, and the federal estate tax will be zero, saving your heirs as much as 55% of their inheritance. The fifth reason you'd want to establish this pre-RV asset protection trust package is for some very specific asset protection benefits. One pre-RV, one post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. What does that mean? Under our system of civil procedure, you can only be sued for what you own in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So let's take the previous example from before. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. You transfer those currencies to our trust package. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. You begin to live a lifestyle more reflective of your newfound wealth, and a couple of years down the road, someone sees that you're living rather comfortably and decides for whatever reason that they're going to sue you. Well, this prospective plaintiff has a couple of problems. First, he or she better have a very strong case and very deep pockets, because this trust is structured in such a way as to make it extremely expensive and extremely time-consuming to pursue civil litigation. But second, and most importantly, once any prospective plaintiff learns that pursuant to the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, the only thing they could ever win by way of a civil award would be the pre-RV value of $5,000, the value of the property at the time you transferred it out of title to our trust, and none of the post-RV value of $25 million. There will be no lawsuit. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop loss. This protects you from future bad acts after you have acquired this wealth. This is accomplished through a legal strategy called segregation of assets, and this is how it would work. Once again, we use the same example. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, transfer the currencies to our trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. Now that you have $25 million in trust, you've decided to make some purchases. So you purchase a larger primary residence, a vacation home, perhaps a half a dozen rental properties for tax write-off and additional cash flow, a couple of cars, a boat, and let's say an RV. But as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate subtrust to be managed by your master trust. Now, why is this important from an asset protection point of view? Well, let's say one day you're driving one of your new cars, you have an accident, the accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards, and you don't legally own anything. So the plaintiffs would be left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your subtrusts. And what's in that subtrust? Merely that one car and the car insurance policy. In that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family. You, as merely the beneficiary of that subtrust, will not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, making you whole. And this is the most important aspect from an asset protection point of view. Your other assets are safely protected in other subtrusts. Why? Because under the law, those separate subtrusts are separate legal entities or separate legal persons, and the plaintiffs would have no standing to pursue a separate legal person uninvolved in the initial accident. Now, these benefits are lost to you if you do not establish your package of trusts prior to the revaluation of these currencies. Now, there is one other benefit, and it is this. If you are, in fact, the holder of one of our pre-RV asset protection trust packages, then you will be eligible to participate in all the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you and that you will need after the revaluation of these currencies. I'll just make mention of one here today. Trusts Unlimited will be sponsoring a post-RV seminar to be held in Disney World, Florida, approximately 30 days after the revaluation of the dinar. Present at that seminar will, of course, be the staff of Trusts Unlimited to assist you with the management and funding of your trust package. Many individuals have expressed desires to establish scholarship funds, foundational trusts, special needs trusts, charitable remainder trusts, and even the more complicated 501c3 nonprofit and offshore trusts. And the proper way to fund those entities is from the direct transfer of funds from your asset protection trust to those newly formed entities. We'll have our tax specialists there. Our offshore specialists will show you that by establishing offshore title of certain assets, you can substantially reduce and in some cases eliminate future taxes on the reinvestment of the net proceeds from the revaluation itself. We will also have our independent fee-based wealth managers there as well. You're going to want to reposition assets after the revaluation for a number of reasons. First, we know statistically that 95% of all windfalls, however large and from whatever source, are lost within 3 to 5 years due to inexperience, mismanagement, and fraud. We also know that under the new G20 bank bail-in provisions, the failure of banks in the future will no longer be made whole through the general taxing authority of the respective governments, but first and foremost by the confiscation of funds at the accounts at those banks. So this is another reason for you to get money out of the banks and at work in other markets as well. And third, the general global shift from fiat-based to commodity-backed currencies in and of itself is going to create extremely volatile financial markets, and you're going to want a substantial amount of your net worth in tangible assets as well. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold your assigned currencies pre-RV and your financial accounts like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV, one gift subtrust, which at any time can be converted to a standard subtrust, and 8 additional subtrusts that will hold financial assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. Now, this was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. By basically restructuring that trust package, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. That includes all 10 trusts. There are several ways you can pay for that. If you pay us up front, we'll discount the price further to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. If that's not possible, we have a deferred payment arrangement. Under that arrangement, you'd make an initial payment of $525, which sum would basically offset our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the revaluation of the dinar occurs, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. So with this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for getting your trust in place prior to the revaluation should be in a position to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your card would be substantially less than the $100 a month you would pay us. One other important issue, we will manage this trust for you for as long as it exists. The only additional cost, lifetime, for this trust would be the cost of the rather nominal fee that a paralegal would charge either to fund the sub-trusts or to amend the trust in any way. We, as the principals of the firm, receive no further compensation. We just need to ensure that the paralegals are paid for making whatever changes that you want to make to your trust. Now, I'm going to go to a Q&A in just a moment. But before I do, and for the benefit of our newer callers, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about Trusts Unlimited and why you may want to seriously consider, at the very least, getting our initial package. Our trust package was authored by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been a practicing attorney for over 40 years, specializing in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've worked in these areas for over 38 years, and I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the reinstatement of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert Bly and I have over 78 years' experience working precisely in this area, and I frankly know of no firm that can make that claim. Now, Bob and I have been working together for a decade in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning, and it has been disheartening from time to time to see people walk away from sound estate planning and trust creation because of the mistaken belief that by doing so they have somehow lost control of their assets and their affairs. In point of fact, under our system of civil litigation, it's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them. And invariably, it's at precisely those times in life that you need and want control. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced in your own life things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are investment losses, business losses, and in some cases even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth now in the aggregate, courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you're anticipating a substantial increase in value. And we at Trusts Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives both pre- and post-RV as we understand them. So again, thanks so much for listening to the call. I'm going to open up the Q&A in just a moment. If you'd like to get our initial package, I suggest you have a pen and paper handy. By receiving our initial package, you are under absolutely no obligation to proceed with the establishment of a trust package, although the package does include everything you need if you wish to proceed. It has a lot of information about us, about the revaluation, about trusts in general. You can review the package. You can contact us either by phone or email if you have any questions. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have, and there will be no consultation fee. Again, we're doing everything we can to help you understand why you need to get your affairs in order prior to this revaluation. So if the things we've discussed are important to you, I hope you'll contact us and get our initial package. Now, I'm going to open the Q&A. 2 quick rules on the Q&A. We take no service calls on the Q&A. By the way, that reminds me, I've got about 24 people to return calls. Right after I get off of this call, I will be knocking those calls out, so you will be hearing from me today or by the close of business tomorrow. Second rule, for obvious reasons, your name and number must be on the screen in order to participate in the Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and open the Q&A now. And while I'm waiting for any potential questions, I'd like to give you our contact information. You can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. If you'd like to listen to a recent conference call playback, or if you'd be kind enough to refer us to someone that might be interested in our services, you can either go to YouTube and go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can go to IQD calls and go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can simply dial the same number that you dialed for this live call this afternoon, with the exception of the last digit. Rather than dialing 4, you'll dial a 3, and then you'll use the same access code, which is 739-394#. If you'd like to be included on our email list, you can go to our website, go to the bottom, enter your name and email address where indicated. You should be in our email list within 24 hours. Bear in mind that we only send emails out periodically pre-RV, but post-RV emails will certainly go out weekly and possibly even daily in the early days. So let's go to the Q&A here. First caller is area code 312. That's got to be Les.
Hey, Jim. Good afternoon. Yeah. Hi. Good afternoon. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Secondly, the delays with Iraq changing their rate, the information that you provided us so gratefully, is that what you got from your intel people? Is that the latest news you got from them?
Yes.
It is.
Why, you got something for me that I don't have?
Well, I just had a question because I know last year they were saying they had to change the rate. We had to wait for the budget. And then they did it. And then they had to do the 2019 budget. And then they did it. But yet, still no RV.
Right.
So,
Well, their intention, now remember, in January, the intention was for the rate to change commensurate with the passage of the 2019 budget. What happened was they did pass the budget, but for a variety of reasons, including Iranian interference and the threat of counterfeiting, they did not proceed with changing the rate. So they held off on their expenditures for the first quarter till halfway through the second quarter. They had to make those expenditures. Once they did that at the 1180 rate, which means that they either have to wait to January or they have to recalibrate the budget. That's why my point was, if they get everything else done, then they're probably going to go ahead, bite the bullet, and recalibrate the budget rather than wait another 4, 5, or 6 months.
So recalibrating the budget shouldn't take long because they're not in the dark age. But remember, by doing that, the rate is an important functional aspect of the budget, which means they'd have to go back to the Parliament, they'd have to pass. Of course, you always know there's a poison pill in there that wants to take something out or add something in. So if they decided today that they were going to do that, it could take 30 to 60 days to get that done just because of who they are. Okay. So give them the 30 to 60 days would mean that they would have an antiquated way of running their numbers, which I don't believe they have, because they have too many outsiders helping them with getting their government in order and providing them with services that they themselves can't provide for themselves.
Yeah, but there's another way to look at this. Let's say you're a contractor and you're going in there and you're going to help rebuild their infrastructure. Well, if they pay me the Iraqi dinar at the current rate, I'm thinking to myself, okay, you're going to pay me the Iraqi dinar. Well, guess what? I'm going to hold on to those suckers until they reinstitute. And then I'm going to convert them to U.S. dollars or francs or whatever I want to do. So, it's a complicated situation. And the Iraqis have made it very complicated because it's a complicated country. They have 3 different sects. The minority sect rode roughshod over the majority for 30 years. Now we have the Iranians interjecting themselves. We have the international community that dumped $3 trillion into that country since 2003, and they want their money back. We have our own administration that is trying to put the clamps on Iran, and Iraq's not cooperating. So it's a very complicated situation.
Well, I remember when they did pass the 2019 budget, they held on to it for about 2 months, and then could have been the beginning of May or the end of March.
Yeah, because they had to start. They had to start making expenditures, and they
paid those people.
Yeah,
they paid them at the new rate.
That's not my understanding. My understanding is they were forced to pay under the old rate.
Okay, so they did change something that gave them 97 cents to the dollar. I remember talking about this.
Yeah, it was like 80-some cents or something like that, but it still was within the parameters of the budget at the old rate.
Okay. Where's their rate at right now, today? Do you know?
I really don't. I think it's definitely not anywhere near $1, because if it was, then they wouldn't be using the dollar, they'd be using the dinar. They're still, and that's why they want to stop the auctions also, auction off the dollar, purchasing it with dinar. They don't want to do that anymore either. So we're kind of stuck in the mud right now. But I just don't think that that's going to be an insurmountable issue if everything else gets done. Right now, the formation of the government's important because the ministers that are not yet in place are critical to this non-sectarian experiment. They're just critical, numbers. I mean, critical individuals. So that's kind of where, like I said, so we're stuck in the mud.
All right. Thanks, Jim, for taking my call again, and say hi to the professor for me.
Yes, sir. All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Well, this was our last caller for this afternoon. Usually we have more calls, but that's fine. I hope that the information I provided for our newer callers will inspire you to contact us and at least get our initial package, see what we're about. As I said, you're under absolutely no obligation by getting the package, even though it includes everything you need should you decide to proceed. You can contact us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to answer those questions. There will be no consultation fee. Our next call is scheduled for next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. Certainly, after the reinstitution of the dinar, these calls will change dramatically, and we will be spending our time addressing the post-RV issues that will be imminent with the reevaluation of the currency globally. Failing anything of a dramatic nature, however, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.